Hello noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking. Today I'd like to talk about swords versus maces. Alright, then here we are back with one of my videos that we can use to discuss and compare different weapons used in ancient times. Now the other day I made a video that was about polearms versus swords, and today we're going to talk about swords versus maces. Now, whenever we talk about these things, and I think that all these topics are interesting, but one thing that is often misunderstood is the fact that there is no better weapon. So it really depends on what you're going to do with a weapon. So in this case, for example, a sword or a mace. When we talk about maces, maces are blunt weapons, of course, and we've been using these kind of weapons for quite a lot of time. But it seems like, and it's commonly accepted that they have become quite popular in the 12th century. Now, does that mean that there were not examples of maces before? Of course there were, but when we talk about the maces with flanges, they did become more popular in the 12th century. The reason being metallic armor. Because the concept with maces and any kind of blunt weapon is that they do give you a huge advantage against metal armor. Maces were actually invented in the Upper Paleolithic, so we're talking about, of course it's a simple club that, adding just spikes of flint or obsidian. So we're talking about a weapon that's been around for a really, really long time. And as far as the disc shape is concerned, it seems like that the Egyptian attempted to give maces a disc shape in the pre-dynastic period. And that's because a disc shape actually provides some cutting capabilities. But the idea was short-lived, preferring a full blunt weapon for its use, particularly in the Middle Ages. There are, however, some examples of flanged maces already in the Byzantine Empire, so we can't really say that they are entirely a 12th century kind of weapon, but they have become more common, particularly after men-at-arms started wearing armor. The reason being that armor is very effective against edged weapons. A mace instead, and any kind of blunt weapon, including warhammers, etc., are very effective against plate armored opponents because of the fact that they can deal a really strong force within a very small area. And with that, they can bypass the plate armor, the protection the plate armor grants, and deal damage regardless of the armor that the person is wearing. Flanged maces instead, because of the flanges, can dent the armor, damage the armor, and penetrate. So without going too much in details, because I want to make this video rather short, there are several different kinds of maces, of course, also depending on what country we're talking about, what period we're talking about. But to have an overall idea, we can consider one-handed maces and two-handed maces, and then of course there were infantry maces, which were shorter, and cavalry maces, which were longer, because they were supposed to be used on horseback in order to grant you more reach. Also, often in video games we see maces made in different materials. That is actually not wrong, because not all maces were made of steel, not all maces were made of iron. Now, of course, iron in Europe was rather common, but there were some areas, for example, Nordic countries and the Sami people are a good example of that, where iron was actually quite scarce. These were deficient areas, iron deficient areas. And in these areas, we actually have quite a few examples of maces being made of bronze and copper, for example. So, back to the original question, what would be the best weapon, a sword or a mace? Well, it all depends on what you're going to use it for. That is the main thing that we need to keep in mind as we try to discuss these kind of VS versus videos. Because if I am fighting a fully armored opponent, then definitely I would go for a blunt weapon, possibly a mace, even better a warhammer, but at the moment we're just discussing maces, because of the advantage that I can get over the opponent. But if I were to fight an opponent without an armor, then I would definitely go for a sword. Because when we talk about historical reality, and we're not actually talking about video games, then it's not that a weapon has a certain DPS or a certain damage attached to it. It all depends what you are going to attack, the kind of targets you're going to attack. So a soft target like skin can be easily cut. Of course, a metal target cannot be cut. But if you do manage to cut your opponent anywhere on his body, then most likely you're going to create bleeding. You might even incapacitate your opponent before having to kill him. You might blind your opponent with blood if you hit him somewhere on the head, even lightly. So you don't really need a lot of force to cause significant damage with an edged weapon. And if blade alignment is correct and you perform either a draw cut or a push cut, then the kind of damage that you can cause to an opponent who's not wearing armor is not calculable. With a mace, however, these things are a little different, because of course if you hit an opponent not wearing armor with a mace, you're still going to deal quite a lot of damage. But to actually incapacitate your opponent, you have to hit him in certain areas. So the thing that we mentioned before, and wherever you hit is going to most likely incapacitate your opponent, does not work with maces and blunt weapons. So you have to hit him either in the head or, for example, hit him in one of the limbs, but you need enough force to be able to break the bone in order to cause serious damage. So if you don't actually get a full blow, which is not an easy thing to do, considering your opponent is not just standing there waiting for you to hit him, then you're not going to cause as much damage with a blunt weapon that you would with an edged weapon. So, in conclusion, I believe that it all depends on the situation. If I were to do an actual duel without an armored opponent, I would definitely go for a sword. If it was a duel against an armored opponent, even if it was in mail armor, I have to say I would go for a mace or a blunt weapon. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching as always, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.